Week 4. Still going deeper and deeper, and deep time shows no ending. Food's already run out. Water runs out in a week. Air runs out in 2 weeks, but we still keep going. And welcome again to the CMTK podcast, Deep Time Silurian Hypothesis Extravaganza, where myself, CM Kosemen, and my good friend TK Sivgin study every epoch in geological history and talk about what human-like species could have evolved from the animals that were living back then. And as you heard in the beginning intro skit, right now we are going deeper and deeper into deep time. This is the 4th episode of a long series, and we don't know how much longer it will last because there's just so many interesting animal groups to talk about. And that was a skit, so we're not really running out of air, but it would also help if you could contribute to our Patreon accounts. The links are in the video description and in the pinned comment. Really, this series is getting really popular these days. It's outperforming many other videos on this channel. So if you're happy with what you're listening, I guess it's only fair you donate at least $1 a month on Patreon. And you know what? Here's the deal. Imagine you donate to us now and 2 months later, you got a change in your situation. You can easily cancel too. So there's no obligation. Yeah, for us, it really makes a difference. So please consider that. And with that out of the way, where were we? What time were we in, TK, when we last left off?
Well, our DeLorean got crushed by a brontosaurus, so I'm guessing we were stuck in the Jurassic period.
Yes, we were studying the age of the dinosaurs and considering potentially intelligent dinosaur lineages. And you have to understand, the age of the dinosaurs is a long one. You know, even the Cretaceous period, which was only one of the 3 epochs that dinosaurs lived in, even that alone is longer than the added complexity, everything that came afterwards. So just think about it in that perspective. And it's a vast era. And I think, as you said, we were just on the boundary between the early Jurassic or the mid-Jurassic. And what do we have on our plate in those days?
Well, some of the stupidest dinosaurs you'll ever know, like Stegosaurus.
Yeah, the very famous, but it might have changed if it had 2 brains. That was the outdated hypothesis that said, this animal.
For context, if people don't know, like there was a time period where it was thought that Stegosaurus and even I think dinosaurs in general had 2 brains.
Mm-hmm.
Because dinosaurs have a cavity in their hip bones called the sacral plexus.
Yep.
And this was an old idea, well, not really suggested by Marsh, but he kind of implied it, like he never outrightly said it, but he implied it, that there was like a big nerve center there that helped with moving the hind legs, because the main brain in the head was just too small to get that job done.
Mm-hmm.
And today this idea is seen as very unlikely because because now we know a lot more about how reptile brains work and how they actually work very well at smaller sizes compared to mammal brains. And also modern birds have that same cavity there in their hip bones, but they don't have a second brain there. They have just a glycogen storage there, so like a sugar.
So just weird fatty sugary molecules. So there's still hope for Stegosaurus, perhaps, as an intelligent species, or maybe not.
Yeah. What was that name? Like Isaberisora, or like we talked about in the last episode?
Just to recap, there is this dinosaur that was related to Stegosaurus, or I mean, these things change every week, so maybe they'll make another assessment. But there's this dinosaur that, imagine a Stegosaurus with a longer body, and it walks on 2 legs, not 4, and it doesn't have any back plates. But that's basically Isaberisora. And although it could be something else, I think most research classifies it as a early offshoot of the Stegosaur lineage. So there is that. It was a very, very generalist herbivorous form with 2 legs and grasping hands. So once again, maybe something suitable for, at least for building nests and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I always wondered what do like these small bipedal herbivorous dinosaurs, what did they use their hands for?
Yeah, I mean,
because they never got like vestigial hands like the theropods, and they always kept like the full number of fingers on there too. So they have been clearly using their hands for something.
Yeah, and the arm bones are very robust. I mean, one hypothesis argues that theropods reduced them because they kept biting each other's arms off. And
yeah, that's a bit of a ridiculous hypothesis. I don't actually believe that.
Well, you say that, but there is one Dilophosaurus fossil with very well preserved arms, and I mean, fossil evidence shows that this thing had like 5 fractures and its arm was crushed. So like, these things were biting each other's arms and hands, maybe among different individuals in the same species. So that could have selected for smaller arms, perhaps. Considering...
Yeah, but I think the main factor is simply this horizontality of the theropod bow plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like when the first thing that always came into contact with like an object or with food was the head and not the arms. Like so the head was always basically favored in interacting with the environment, and this made the arms just only secondary features. Let's say it like that.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and this would have lent very well to them becoming vestigial in some lineages. I mean, there were obviously theropods with very strong muscular arms like Allosaurus or the Spinosaurids.
Or the Megaraptorans.
Exactly, yeah.
A lot of these animals, especially Megaraptorans, we still clearly don't understand what they were like. And sometimes the Megaraptors get classified as literally like smaller tyrannosaurs with really huge arms and something like that. But
like a meme.
Yeah, exactly. And what's the latest consensus on Megaraptorans, if I may ask?
I don't think there is really a consensus. I mean, if you were to ask Darren Naish, he would say they are like early tyrannosauroids.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he says himself that his opinion is a bit controversial.
Mm-hmm.
And many others, I think, classify them either as just like basal coelurosaurs that survived until the Cretaceous.
Yep.
Or that they are like some offshoot of the earlier carnosaurs, which, if you don't know, carnosaurs today are just a group that encompasses megalosauroids and allosauroids.
Okay, once carnosaurs used to be a wastebasket taxon.
Yes, exactly.
A little bit like the ornithopods are still today. But anyways, back to the matter at hand. Any contenders for intelligent dinosaurs in those ages?
Well, we already talked about the late Jurassic, like the early Jurassic. That's actually kind of a mysterious time. There are like not many fossil deposits from that time. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And there's a big fossil gap there, right?
Yeah. Especially in the middle Jurassic too, which is a bit frustrating because most cladistic analyses would suggest that like a lot of important points in dinosaur evolution happened exactly at that time, like the origin of birds, for example.
Yep. Well, going back to the Silurian hypothesis, the lack of clear fossils from that huge era all around the world, it shows us how easily things could disappear. And let us play the game assuming we have to have an intelligent species then. And what would your closest contender be?
Well, it's generic, but probably some kind of theropod.
Mm-hmm.
Just like we keep mentioning this novel, but it keeps being relevant, Evolution by Stephen Baxter, where he imagines like this Ornitholestes civilization that only made tools and dwellings out of wood, and so nothing of their culture was ever preserved.
I'm
imagining something like that. Yes, what did you say?
I was researching about this the other day, and I remembered Wayne Douglas Barlow, the very famous speculative evolution god artist, once had a series of drawings where he sketched out these intelligent dinosaurs known as the Mutata, M-U-T-A-T-A. Yeah.
Mutata,
I'm looking at Mutata Barlow, and they seem to be Ornitholestes descendants too. And it comes from a dinosaur book. I think it might be Ray Bradbury Presents Dinosaur World or some fiction, some sort of sci-fi collection like that.
Mutata. Darren Naish tweeted about this once. I'm trying to look at it. Or no, wait.
So in this book, you got pictures of.
Okay, wait. So apparently it's like it's a Ray Bradbury story. You were correct. Apparently it's like a spin-off of A Sound of Thunder. You know that story?
Enlighten me, please. I don't think I do.
It's this story where like a time traveler like goes back to the Jurassic and accidentally steps on a butterfly, and then he comes back to his own time, and it changed history so much that he now lives in a dystopian dictatorship.
Okay. Well,
literally about like butterfly effect taken literally.
Yeah.
And I guess the story is called simply Dinosaur Planet.
A very creative name.
Yeah, which I don't know if it was written by Bradbury or if it's just supposed to take place in the same universe. But yeah, the sketches are very interesting by Barlow. It looks like it could be a Coelurosaur. It could really be anything. It looks like a very generic 90s dinosaur.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 1990s style dinosaur. Once again, it's really beautifully rendered. It looks like a generic, almost like an ornithomimus type of thing. It's got long arms with 3 digits and grasping hands. It's got like a thinnish neck and maybe toothless beak, but actually there's like a big dome over its skull, so you kind of see it's brainier. It almost looks like one of those parrots without feathers. And once again, like this could have been, I haven't read the book. It may not be very well scientifically argued, but this thing, the drawing is so nice and lifelike by Wayne Barlow that it kind of puts a suspension of disbelief effect over the whole thing. And to make the thing even more believable, next to it, there's this illustration of a mutata nest, which is like this long half-egg shaped mud building with female dinosaurs hatching eggs upstairs and then warriors sleeping downstairs. And they have got very plausible looking weapons. So they have something like a spear that the animal grips. And maybe because these things don't have very, very strong shoulders like primates do, there are actually metal balls near the grips that are like tennis ball sized. So it has extra weight at the handle. So when the thing pushes it, the weight of the balls kind of helps drive the blade forward. So I mean all of those details really make this thing more believable, but maybe that could be a likeness of the speculative mid-Jurassic Ornitholestes derivative we were talking about.
Okay, 2 points. First, like many people have said in the comments, it would be great if we had like pictures included in the podcast. And yeah, just so you know, I am planning in the future to put all of these episodes together into one mega video.
Yes.
Where I will put relevant pictures in the timeline.
And I will include this image in the video background picture, so at least you'll be able to see that.
Yeah. First, okay, that's the first point. Second, did you know that Wayne Barlow also illustrated the Yilane?
Oh yes, the West of Eden trilogy.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't know, there is this. I think it is a trilogy of books. I think it's like 5 books. Anyway, called West of Eden, which it takes place in a universe where the asteroid never hit Earth, and so evolved a species of intelligent mosasaur that competes with a race of humans that evolved from New World monkeys in this world.
Yep.
And his drawing. Wait, I have it here somewhere. Wait.
I have the 3 books from that series. One is called West of Eden, which I think is a silly name because it's a riff off East of Eden, which is a John Steinbeck story. And after West of Eden, I think it was called Return to Eden. What? Just a second. Wait, I need to look this up. West of Eden. Yeah, a series of novels by Harry Harrison. And the pictures that Barlow painted for this series, I remember it too. It was very, very touching. So we are looking at like a kneeling figure in a nuclear sunset. It looks like a human being, but when you get closer, it's actually a lizard man. And if you study the details, it has a kind of spear, but the spear has actually been created out of like a really elongated crab, basically. So a caveat in this book is that these Yilane creatures use biotechnology. So they got guns, but they're actually portable monitor lizards that spit poisonous spikes. They have like half-track armored personnel carriers, but they're actually genetically modified therizinosaurs with 8 legs, which I always thought was the most ridiculous thing in the whole book.
And also like ichthyosaur submarines, even though ichthyosaurs already were extinct by the Cretaceous.
But they got some more credible creations too. Like one of their biological tool beasts is they just call them cloaks, and they're these huge mollusks that wrap themselves around the cold-blooded Yilane bodies, and they just make them warmer. So there's that.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's such a creative world. And if you don't want to read the books, Dino Diego again, like he did like a whole video series where he summarizes everything that happens.
So there are 3 books in this series. One is called West of Eden, another one is called Winter in Eden, and a last one is called Return to Eden. And the first one starts out like a normal, quote-unquote normal, warm-blooded human versus cold-blooded reptile story. And I remember the details about the Yilane language were really well thought out. The book actually has special characters referring to the body postures that the Yilane antagonists make when they're speaking, because in their language, body postures and like certain movements with the tail and arms, they're almost like dancing. They are part of the language. So in a weird way, these things get committed into the book. In a sad way, I mean, there's a whole like orphan trauma and revenge story. So like, look, if you want spoilers, I'm sorry, I don't care. But if you don't want spoilers, I don't care. But there's a human that gets captured by these reptilians, and actually the leader of the reptilians, it's a matriarchal society. The leader of the reptilians also rapes this guy in a very weird and uncomfortable scene.
Yeah, that was something. When was this book written? Like, I know there is this like time where sci-fi got really weirdly horny.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time when there's also things like the gore series of books are also rising. Yeah, they were written a bit earlier, but it's called GOR, and you know what? I'm not even going to explain them, but they're super horny. But actually, this violation scene serves as a motive for the character's revenge, because then he escapes. The reptilian masters, actually they use him to lie. There's this one really evil reptilian character. Her name was Mavainte, I think. I can never forget. And she notices that humans can lie, and in a weird, I don't know how, but in a weird way, apparently the Yilane cannot lie because their language incorporates color changes and body movements, so they can't fake those. So they're always really truthful. Like, you can't even tell simple lies, which is very stupid. So the antagonist uses our lead character to lie for her, and she gains political power. And something happens. The lead character, his name is Kerik. He runs away. Then he bands together with other humans, and they conduct this guerrilla warfare against the dinosaurs. And it's just like a bloodbath to the end. At the very end, they start burning down the city. And in another one of those weird twists.
They don't know what fire is. I remember.
Yeah,
that.
They don't know what fire is, and one of the lead characters says, "I will tell you something important now. There's a chemical reaction we have studied for a long time. It is called fire." And obviously, I mean, did these creatures not exist on Earth? Because even in nature, fires are a common occurrence. I think I know we took a big tangent here, but I guess that's what most of you listen to this channel for. In this book, I think they took the really alien trope a bit too far. So things like being completely unable to lie or not knowing what fire is, they're hard to believe. I mean, if something lives in the world, in the physical plane, you probably will know what fire is. So there's that.
Yeah. And
there's actually a very weird note about Yilane evolution. You mentioned it briefly, but would you want to go maybe deeper over that? Because you expect these things to be dinosaurs, but they're not.
They are mosasaurs, which, as we discussed, were fully marine lizards that lived at the end of the Cretaceous. And yeah, it's a weird choice. Like, I mean, I guess, like, probably, I think the author's name was Harry Harrison. Very funny. I think he was probably inspired by like cetacean intelligence, so he chose water-based species. But of course, it's weird that these mosasaurs would come onto land again and redevelop like fingers and toes and like become completely land-living animals again.
Yeah, I never bought that.
Yeah, I guess like when he was writing this in the 80s, I think it was still thought that mosasaurs could still crawl onto land to lay eggs.
Yeah, even then, I mean, it's like expecting a sea turtle to develop into ninja turtles, which is...
I mean, that would be a funny scenario. Like, why has nobody ever done like a turtle seed world?
I'm sure there's at least somebody working on something like that. But oh, anyways, that was the West of Eden series. It's a really nice series of books, so strongly recommended. So, and I think we're done with the Jurassic, are we? Or
yes, unless you want to talk about like some non-dinosaur group. Like I remember in one episode you joked about like a mammal civilization hidden somewhere in the Mesozoic.
I used to think about something like this, but in that instance, the mammals were descendants of Permian era prehistoric mammal-like reptiles. But yeah, something like that could crop up at any period, to be honest. I mean, the age of the dinosaurs was already very long, and there were a lot of mammal groups, a lot of phantom lineages, and you know, it's not impossible for a digging, underground, warren-building pseudo-civilization to evolve out of whatever lived.
Yeah. Imagine at the end of the Triassic, some like part of Pangaea, like some Madagascar-sized island splits off from Pangaea and like travels so far that like dinosaurs cannot easily reach it anymore per water. And so like some lineage of synapsid or early mammals survives there, develops into megafauna. And I guess something like, vaguely human-like could develop on there. And I don't know, at some point in time they develop boats and then they explore the world and set up colonies.
Yeah, a more realistic version of the West of Eden series. By the way, speaking of which, a lot of mammals at that time still reproduced by laying eggs. So that's interesting, and it makes for some more interesting possibilities too.
Yes. Although I think it is controversial with how early like viviparity evolved.
So you are saying that monotremes, which we know, quote unquote, primitive mammals, I mean, which also lay eggs, by the way, things like the platypus and the echidna. So those things are not representative of every ancient mammal out there.
Yes, like I think it was, for example, thought for a long time that multituberculates laid eggs. Or that they carried their children in pouches like marsupials. But I think there was like some new work that suggests that they gave birth to like more fully developed young, like placental mammals. I don't remember the details, but yeah, it is. I think the problem is just we have never found egg fossils of any Mesozoic mammal.
Nothing, not even a small one or nothing.
Not that I know of, because obviously
really
these eggs would have been very thin and leathery shelled, so not like calcitic eggshells like birds have. So it would be hard to preserve that unless it's like some Lagerstätte, like those volcanic beds in China. Maybe you can find something like that there.
Well, I think wherever they were laid, wherever they were laid, these eggs were very carefully hidden, so less chance to fossilize.
Definitely, yeah. They probably laid them inside trees or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
There is also this possibility raised. I think their niche had that in a blog post from 2 years ago. Very very suggests the possibility that maybe some mammals like secondarily redeveloped egg laying, which because there apparently is some evidence that this happened in some squamates. There are what are these called in English? Blindschleiche, blindworms, like these lizards that look like snakes, but they are not actually snakes.
Slowworms
slowworms, I guess. That's what they're called.
They do give birth to live young.
Yeah,
yes.
they do give birth to live young, but there is also like one lineage that lays eggs. But in recent cladistic analysis, they found out that this egg-laying lineage is like surrounded on both sides by life-bearing species.
So
which would imply that they evolved egg-laying secondarily, which I don't know how that works. But
that's very bizarre. I mean, if our hypothetical early mammal, early Jurassic civilization was derived out of some egg-laying clade, then I think it would make sense there would be a stronger impetus for these things to have like a colonial or almost termite-like caste system where there's an actual queen that lays actual eggs, and like there are workers that carry these eggs around almost like ants. Now in the present day you have naked mole rat which give birth to live young, and they have a sort of colonial like society system, but I think because of an absence of eggs they cannot specialize deeply. But imagine there's something that looks like basically for all the definition like egg-laying rats, and I think those things would or could evolve into some pretty weird hyper-specialized egg-laying forms. So yeah.
Wait, can I show you something? Let me share my screen with you. Like this is this paper that recently found that there was like a whole unknown diversity of monotremes living in Cretaceous Australia. And I just love this paleo art and how the artists illustrate all of these different monotremes, and they are such fascinating looking creatures as if they really looked like that.
Yes,
because it basically is little mammals, but almost with like theropod dinosaur heads. I think your microphone is not working right now.
Sorry, I am looking at this. I'm looking at this painting by Peter Schouten, this really great watercolor artist, and he's got this really incredible technique where every strain of moss and every hair on the animals' bodies is really well clearly rendered, and he's just a really talented artist, and he's illustrated this faunal assemblage of these chunky, almost opossum-like animals. There's a small one that swims, there's an even smaller one that's almost like a dormouse, and there are things that look like badgers, and there's something bigger that kind of looks like a quoll or a kind of marten or something. But yeah, as you described, all of these things lack ears. They have these smooth, almost beak-like snouts and these small, almost reptilian eyes on the sides of their body. So imagine, if you will, these things that look like hairy, chunky lizards, and they're just fantastic.
Yeah, and I just want to like develop a whole megafauna out of these things.
Yeah, apparently one of them was pig-sized, so it was pretty mega. It is labeled as Styrtodon, and yeah, the pig-sized Styrtodon elizabethae. So yeah, like a whole new world we never knew existed.
Yes, and imagine and you are hypothesizing if these things developed intelligence, it would have again been through the eusocial way of the naked mole rat.
Yep. So
they would become a swarm intelligence.
Yes, swarm intelligence, or remember, some of these things may have been poisonous too, so maybe they guarded their nests really well. And in order to make the impact that an intelligent species would make on the planet, all they would have to do would be to just do some sort of farming or some weird behavioral bioagriculture. Maybe they culture the type of fungus, or maybe somehow they could tame fires and just burn and cook things. Who knows? Or maybe they
could farm little dinosaurs.
Yeah, probably.
Like ants farm aphids.
Yeah, that's not impossible. So something like this. I don't know. I don't see it as a plausible option, but if I was forced at gunpoint to put forward a candidate, it may have been something like that.
To any listener who, by the way, imagines or like comes up with sci-fi scenarios and books and such based on our ideas, if you don't credit us and send us that money, I will find you and I will send fire ant up your ass.
Okay, that's very you have mastered the control of ants, it seems, but that kind of that kind of thing happens more often than you think. I mean, I remember going to a science fiction conference with fellow sci-fi authors, Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I'm really sorry, the guy who wrote Fellow Tetrapod. What was his name?
I don't know. I can look it up if you want.
No, it's really embarrassing because I'm good friends with him. But yeah, I'm looking it up too. Fellow Tetrapod. Daniel Benson. Yeah, Daniel Benson, a longtime friend. Sorry, by the way, also for posterity. This is the 13th of July, Saturday, and in 2024. And yesterday I recorded 2 hours of live streaming, which as fellow Turkish streamer Hasan abi would tell you, really sucks the life out of you. So I'm a bit tired, so apologies for that. But yeah, Daniel Benson, the author of Fellow Tetrapod, and Adrian Tchaikovsky, the author of the Children of Time series. I remember meeting them in 2014 in London in a science fiction convention, and we were just bouncing ideas back and forth. And I gave some ideas to Adrian Tchaikovsky, but he credited me in one of his books. It's from the Children of Time series, so he used some of my ideas for dinosauroids and stuff. So yeah, there's that. So a lot of inspiration happens, and I guess I'm always happy and proud when it does.
Yeah, I'm seeing like some of the illustrations in this book are by Tim Morris, who is a great guy. Like he always has such really cool like one-shot ideas at speculative
evolution
scenarios.
Yeah, he's really talented, and he's got entire websites full of these really quirky spins on speculative evolution. I mean, he's got one series where he imagines every African cryptid as a realistic prehistoric survivor. He's got another project where he catalogs these airborne creatures and imagines those as plausible cryptids. So like really talented.
My favorite of his, I forgot the name. I think Teratopia. I think that was the name where he
the land
where he imagines an island where all of these outdated paleontology ideas are like actual creatures.
Yeah, and he's a great researcher, by the way. Yeah, I mean those Teratopia creatures. I mean it's got everything. It's got Troodon as a predatory pachycephalosaur. It has got Basilosaurus as a actual sea serpent. Everything is there.
Or Dinotherium as like a walrus. And
Yep.
Yeah, and some of that stuff is so obscure, not even I knew about it, and I learned a lot from. Like everyone, go visit Teratopia. Oh, I hope that's the actual name of the project. Wait.
It is. It's called Teratopia. So there.
Oh wait, there's also a video game with that name, so that might complicate things.
Oh really? Let me search for it too.
I guess just search for Teratopia Tim Morris.
Yes.
To avoid confusion.
You
even you promoted him on your Twitter, I see.
Yes. So yeah, it's on this web platform called Weebly, by the way. So Weebly. So I'm sure you'll be able to find it. And yeah, I want to go back and give it a reread sometime soon.
Me too. So I think that's it for the Jurassic.
Let's
come to the Triassic, which is what we actually wanted to talk about. But
we can finally move to the Triassic. Yes. So actually, the Triassic period is really fantastic because, as this paleo meme goes, it was the era right after a big extinction in the Permian, where almost 80% of all life forms became extinct. So the Triassic was an age of experimentation, and you do have a lot of really weird groups of animals living there. You got things like Tanistrophiids, which have extremely long necks, consisting out of like their neck vertebrae are like ski poles, so they're like bunches of sticks with a head on top. There are a number of gliding animals, including something called Charopteryx, which had a gliding membrane on its hind leg. So this thing looks like a frog with very long rear legs and a long tail. And there's a membrane stretched between those, like a weird kite. But the front part of the animal probably was not webbed, and I don't know, it's a very bizarre creature. Yes. What else? I mean, I'm sure you know if you could count a few Triassic weirdos yourself.
Well, we are looking for things that could develop intelligence, and
the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, among arboreal species, where we probably want to look first, there are the Drepanosaurs, which are these weird. Well, their classification is still very controversial, but they looked like a mix. Imagine like big fat chameleons, but with the heads of birds.
Yeah, exactly. And one species even has like a claw on top of its tail. I think the same species also has claw bones on its hands that are so big that they have repurposed their ulna and radius. These are the two forearm bones. Like one of them pops out forward and actually binds with this big thumb claw that is also flat and big. We don't know what this thing was doing.
And that's the issue with these things for our scenario. Like they are already so specialized that it's hard to imagine it's hard to imagine something could evolve out of that could hold a tool.
Yeah, I agree. But then again, some other drepanosaurs actually had a almost chameleon-like split grasping hand.
That is true. Yeah, like Megalanchosaurus is one of those. Yeah, they had these very chameleon-like hands. You're right.
So I think there's a strong candidate. I mean, I could just imagine if for some reason, there are actually ground chameleons that live in deserts. So they used to live on trees, but then their habitat changed. So now they walk on the ground. So something like that. I mean, a ground living version of these very bizarre arboreal grasping creatures. But maybe despite being intelligent, just for shits and giggles, I would imagine this thing would not be very sophisticated, or for whatever reason would maybe have no interest in building agriculture, because those things are insectivores. So who needs it? So along those lines, I'm imagining an intelligent form that only knows how to make music the best. So it picks up little stones and knocks them together with strange, simple melodies. And if you're lucky to go out at that time of the night, you could hear them. But since you weren't, those things got extinct, leaving behind no fossils and no memories. And that was that.
I mean, but couldn't they farm insects?
They probably could, but at most they could have these territorial conflict for like, my territory has 3 termite hills, I'm richer, or something like that,
Well, that's the problem. We are so far back in time, termites don't exist yet, I think. I think all of these colonial insects that you can think of, like ants and termites and such, and bees, they only start showing up in the Cretaceous with the with the evolution of flowering plants. That's something we have to keep in mind.
But there would have to be something like that. But yeah, maybe not as intensely. Oh well, what about your Triassic candidate?
I mean, the thing about the Triassic, it was kind of the golden age of bipedalism.
Yeah.
Because not only did you have the first dinosaurs that were bipeds, but you had all of these different groups of pseudosuchians and generally ornithodyrans that also, I think, independently actually evolved bipedalism. Because it used to be thought that the earliest archosaurs were already facultative bipeds, like Euparkeria. But there was this study last year that showed that Euparkeria actually had no adaptations towards bipedalism. And this suggests that all these crocodile ancestors and dinosaurs and such, they evolved that independently from each other. Probably because they were already predisposed to it, then it's called parallelism and not true convergent evolution, but whatever. Anyway, what I'm getting at, you had a lot of creatures running around with 3 hands to use.
Yep. A lot of different lineages, including the classic ancestral dinosaurs like Eoraptor or Herrerasaurus. Even I think the earliest sauropods had 3 hands.
Yeah,
they had big claws on there, but still they could wield them about.
Well, not sauropods, but sauropodomorphs, like Plesiosaurus, of course. But Eoraptor that you mentioned is actually classified today as one of the earliest sauropodomorphs.
Oh, yeah, I keep forgetting about that, but true.
Yeah, like the very earliest sauropodomorphs were basically just small theropods in appearance. Like they were still carnivores and small bipeds, and then very quickly they grew into these large plant-eating bipeds like Plesiosaurus, and at the end of the Triassic, some of them started walking on all 4s permanently, and those became the sauropods.
I mean, in that age, the deeper you go back to the root of all dinosaur ancestors, ancestors, and including the ancestors of pterosaurs, you do arrive at this kind of small-bodied, lightly built, long-limbed, and long-armed generalist creature. Something like a marasukusaur. In fact, I famously predicted something like this in an earlier drawing, and what was the animal called?
Something with a V, like
Venetoraptor.
Venetoraptor. Yes, exactly.
I mean, so it's not impossible for something like that to keep.
Oh, look at the Wikipedia page. It's such a cute drawing of it.
Yeah, it's like a cartoon character. So it superficially looks like a small predatory dinosaur with a very long tail, long arms, long legs, and covered in fur. And
what fucks me up that it literally has a beak already.
Yep, that's fascinating too.
Yeah, like it gives a bit of credence to this one idea. What was his name again? Like the guy that came up with the birds came first idea.
Oh, well, I keep forgetting, not an Italian guy, but yeah, he basically writes all sorts of books like that. Just a second.
Yeah, wait, I know in which book I have to wait, or do I?
Wait, I'm getting to the bottom of this.
You can keep talking while I'm looking for the book.
Well, it's a very sleepy afternoon, and I'm just really having a nice...
I found it. I found the book. I found the book.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to look for the relevant chapter. George Olszewski.
And Feduccia, Alan Feduccia.
No, those are two separate ideas. Alan Feduccia believes that birds basically have nothing to do with dinosaurs.
Okay.
George Olszewski, he basically flips everything on its head and says that dinosaurs descend from birds, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like his idea is that the very earliest archosaurs or proto-dinosaurs, proto-pterosaurs were already small arboreal and feathered animals that already looked a lot like birds. And
so yeah,
all the dinosaurs that came after are secondarily ground living or even secondarily flightless.
I think Gregory Paul was riffing on a variety of this idea when he proposed that therizinosaurs were secondarily flightless.
Paul actually came first. Like he already proposed this idea that some dinosaurs are actually secondarily flightless all the way in the 80s. And Olszewski, I think, only proposed this back in the 90s.
I mean, imagine if that was the case. It just says so much about the potentials of bird evolution, and like seed any world with birds and you could get instant dinosaurs, and that would have been cool.
Well, for more information, see Serena.
Yeah, but Serena still, the creatures have sort of like a birdiness, but this is just like birds came first and then boom, everything from ankylosaurs to sauropods to allosaurs, and it's just weird and cool to think about.
Yes, but that's the thing, like Venetoraptor and such, they show that there is maybe some truth to this idea. Well, not in its extreme form, but yeah, some of the earliest dinosaur and probably also pterosaur ancestors probably were these small, feathered, like bipedal creatures that probably could also climb a bit.
Now, I'm always curious to think about what would happen if something from this earliest radiation evolved into something like an archosaurian monkey, and instead of turning into a pterosaur or a maniraptor, it would specialize once again for nest building and tool construction, and it would be a sight to behold, I think.
Exactly. Well, the problem is we addressed this in the previous episode. Theropods, simply due to anatomical constraints, cannot really become like monkeys, like specialized tree climbers, because they cannot pronate the wrists. And also because of how the dinosaur hip is built with this fenestra in the, like, if you don't know, one of the unique characteristics of dinosaurs is that they have a hole in their hips where the thigh bone fits in like a Lego piece.
Yep.
And only dinosaurs have that, and it means that they actually cannot splay their legs out wide without
too far.
circulating. So they cannot do the splits like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Well,
and both of these both of these things prevent them from basically hugging a tree in the same way an ape or a squirrel could. So they were, when they wanted to be arboreal, they were restricted in climbing a tree pretty much in the same way as a tree kangaroo would.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. Like Gregory S. Paul proposes that this was a major constraint that led to the evolution of birds as we know them. Because if dinosaurs were actually able to become fully arboreal, they probably would have evolved like membranous wings, like pterosaurs or bats instead, and they wouldn't have had such a proclivity to become secondarily flightless again. That's the thing about birds. Even when they don't have wings, they still work very well because they have very good legs. And you cannot say the same about pterosaurs and bats.
Yeah, also, I mean, as you mentioned, the dinosaur hip bone was adapted. Also, the hip had a kind of L-shaped head, so it would fit just in that hole. And yet, it cannot really splay without breaking the head of the hip bone in the socket. So, yeah, don't do that. And so for that reason, you can never have like a dinosaur descendant, at least as we know it, hanging out from a vine like a monkey would. You really can't even rotate your arm backwards and
that is something only apes. That is something only apes can do, actually, like this range of motion.
Yeah, so when you're doing jumping jacks, be thankful you're an ape.
Exactly. But you could still have like an arboreal creature, but it would have to be modeled more after tree kangaroos, because they have the same thing where they cannot splay their legs.
Yeah. But I still can see something small living in the trees, like those tree people, very early post-dinosauroids, and they would be like dinosaurian evocs in a way.
Well, the problem is that, they're actually, most of the deposits we have from the Triassic are like from desert environments.
Yep, true.
But there, around the equator of Pangaea, there probably were a lot of these monsoonal rainforests.
Yeah, nobody knows what lived in them.
Yeah, but we don't have fossils from that because that's not a good environment for fossilization. So who knows what lurked in there?
Yeah. Also, I am curious. I think in the very early Triassic, you had these giant versions of the mammal-like reptiles still dominating the world. Things like Lysovischia or stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, Lysovischia, I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, you are correct.
It's actually from the late Triassic. Like that was one of the very last Dicynodonts.
Oh, bizarre. So still, would you reckon these things would have pig-like intelligence?
Could be. I don't know how large Dicynodont brains were, but that's again, like that's probably not. Well, brain size isn't everything. But yeah, these things have been alive for a very long time, and they even survived the worst mass extinction in Earth's history. And I would not be surprised if they did have intelligence comparable to maybe some mammals today.
Yeah, so I would chalk that up as a suitable candidate too. So there.
Yeah, you did a whole video about this idea of eusocial animals like eusocial Dicynodonts that caused the Permian Triassic mass extinction by basically burning the world.
Yeah, exactly. And the Sociality Trick is something I like using because as far as we know, there were no monadic intelligences like us. But you could still have something like a civilization and like a great impact on the world just through the virtue of building these basically brainless cities and like not knowing anything about symbols and not knowing anything about language or anything. You could just have animals just repeating certain behaviors over and over and fortifying and changing their environment, and that could quickly upset the balance of the world really fast.
And they just blindly run into extinction.
Yeah, I mean, you look at those termite cities in Australia and South America, and they're entire hundreds of kilometers square areas where these termite moons emerge from the ground like giant teeth or tombstones, really. And I mean, you could argue that's like a mega city of non-human intelligences right there. So I always imagined something similar, but with either like primitive mammals or monotremes or mammal-like reptiles and so on and so forth. So that's the trope I keep using.
I remember you also have this one drawing where a Plateosaurus walks by some ancient ruins with a vaguely humanoid face.
Oh, yeah. And
did you ever imagine any lore behind that, or do you want to keep that to yourself?
Oh, there's not. I mean, the lore isn't that deep. The face is actually an almost exact replica of a theater column I saw in. Well, there's a place called the Bithynia Museum of Archaeology, and Bithynia was one of Alexander the Great's client kingdoms, and today it lies in a Turkish province called Kastamonu and near neighboring district. So there's like a little known archaeological site there, which is almost as rich as Ephesus. And there was just this one haunting face. And I took a picture of that and just translated it to an imaginary Triassic period. And there's that. The idea was that before the Triassic, so in the Permian period, which is the era we're gonna be seeing next, there could have been a form of lystrosaurs, which were these similar pig-like mammaloid reptiles. And they have a weird fossil thing too. I mean, there are these entire deposits where you only have lystrosaurs, nothing else. It's like they're cattle or maybe even like people in a city. They did come in different species, but when they're found, they're always found en masse, and their presence always coincides with these great big extinctions at the end of the Permian. So in my mind, like, that weird face-bearing column was a leftover from a civilization built by those creatures, and that was that. There's even a follow-up illustration where I pictured a sort of like a very early armored dinosaur, something like a Scutellosaurus, and it's hiding below a column left behind by this lost civilization. So yeah.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, just look up Kosemen Scutellosaurus and you'll find it.
Okay.
I'm curious to know what you think about it. It's a black and white picture, so it doesn't stand out much.
So in this vision, the civilization, would they themselves be lystrosaurs, or would they just keep them as pets, as domestic animals?
I think they themselves would be lystrosaurs somehow.
It's this one, right?
Let me check. Yep, that is the one. Yes.
Nice.
So it's just a picture of an animal sheltering under a column, but a column in that world. So that's where the idea is.
That's like one of my favorite tropes in fiction, this mysterious out-of-place object.
Yeah, and a lost temple and stuff
because
like that.
Because it always feels like just a middle finger to whoever finds it. Like, fuck you, I don't have to explain it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this whole lore of out-of-place artifact.
Yeah.
When we were studying the cryptoterrestrial paper, they were making a big deal out of it. So that's always something to hope for.
But it's always such a great story idea, as exemplified by movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Just finding something where it doesn't belong, it already builds up such a mystery.
Yep. There's also a sci-fi book by the name of The Artifact, and I haven't read it. I have it in my library, but I still have to open it and read it sometimes. Wait, it's called The So Artifact with an E. Or was it called The Artifact? But they discovered this 3 million year old cube in Crete or somewhere in Greece. And just a second, just a second.
The Artifact, is it by Michael Gear?
It's either Gregory Benford or the author you mentioned. Once again, it's a bit...
Yeah, it's a very generic title, and I see there's multiple books with that name.
Yeah, even multiple.
It also reminds me of this one book called Fragment, where they find an island in the middle of the Pacific that's been separated from the rest of the world since the Cambrian.
It's funny how in those like late 90s books, it's always like a reality TV crew that finds these things. So like that was the deal with the Fragment by Warren Fahey. And yeah, the author of the Artifact is Gregory Benford. I can confirm this. Sounds interesting. It's one of those, like, you know, you go to a holiday and it's like an old hotel, and in the lobby there's this book. A small cube of rock has been unearthed in a 3,500-year-old Mycenaean tomb. and an incomprehensible object in an impossible place. Its age, purpose, and origins are unknown. And then there's a big spy thriller after that. So, like, go check it out if that's your kind of thing. But which also, let us ask our audience, since you really comment a lot on these videos, which out of place artifact would you like to be real, or what is the most mysterious real life, in quotes, out of place artifact lore you have read? Like, share it with us in the comments so we know what's what.
I can tell you one.
Which is it?
Do you know, you probably know, Mars has a moon called Phobos.
Yep.
And on one of the satellite pictures, you can literally see the monolith from 2001.
Really? I did not know about this.
Literally something that looks like the monolith, and you can see that it literally is sticking out straight out of the surface because it's the shadow of the object. And yeah, I think it even has its own Wikipedia page, the Phobos monolith.
Oh yeah. I'm looking at it as you search now. The Phobos monolith.
You see it? I mean, it probably is just a really big boulder.
It's just a rock. I mean, even the shadow is not rectangular. But
yeah, but apparently, maybe I misremember, but apparently the estimated size of this is like 90 meters tall.
Whoa.
So like a small skyscraper.
Yeah.
That's a big boulder just sticking out straight out of the surface of this moon, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, if space travel was ever practical, this would be a prime tourist location, because it would be like Alice Springs in Australia, where you go and, you know, there's this big famous Ayers rock in the middle of the desert. They call it Uluru, and wow, I'm looking at another picture of this Mars monolith now, and
yeah, me too.
And this is an object on the surface of Mars. That's far more uncanny.
Yeah, it looks actually rectangular. That's right.
Yeah. So this is something I would like to believe.
Yeah, but it could just be, you know, one of these desert rocks that have been carved by the wind into these very weird shapes.
Yeah, it's kind of
find it all the time in Egypt and such.
Maybe it's Elon Musk's secret Mars program already there.
I don't think Elon Musk is competent enough to get anything to Mars. That's the interesting thing, by the way, discussed in the original Silurian hypothesis paper. That maybe one of the places where we could find evidence of a past civilization from Earth would be on the Moon and Mars.
Yeah, because they had a space program.
Yeah, because those would be the only places unaffected by Earth's erosion and plate tectonics. So yeah, I mean, I think that I've seen this a lot in like comics and such already. Like, imagine you go on the moon and you find there like a dinosaur skeleton fossilized inside a spacesuit. And
well, you know, there's actually a very weird pseudoscience theory about that. And it just happens to be in my YouTube to-do folder, and there's this crazy Indian researcher.
Oh my god, I know which one you mean.
Yeah, it's called, last name is Saxena, Saxena, and so they literally look at, so they have scientific articles with titles like burial pits with animal and alien skulls present on the south pole of the moon suggest humans and aliens may have existed on the moon at some time, and then discoveries of Sri Yantra or like Hindu pyramid type objects on the moon, and they're all based on these like really sketchy radar scan images of the moon. One paper is called "Is the Moon Littered with Dinosaur Remnants of the Mesozoic Era?" But the quote-unquote dinosaurs they report are like kaiju sized. So it says, like, one image says there's a T-Rex skull in the
not just that, like he also says he found like a dragon skeleton on the moon. And how do you write something like that and not see yourself as a dunce? Like this, at some point it has to be trolling, no?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, you know, some people, again, I mean, scientific publication has become so routine and it adheres just to the rules of the process rather than the spirit of it. So if you only focus on the rules, guys like this could argue very weird hypotheses. There's nothing stopping them. I think there's a like genuine case of crank science involved too, where like, the guy just wants to make a discovery. I think this is also the the operating principle behind some of those flat earth people.
Yeah.
So there's that, you want to believe. I mean, there are similar guys. Also, there was this like Japanese scientist who found like tiny stones and imagined he was seeing like fossils of 2 centimeter tall people in them and stuff like that. So that's the difference.
Yeah. Regarding India, apparently they have a big problem with a lot of these cranks managing to get their papers into what is by their standards peer-reviewed journals.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Himalayan fossil hoax?
No, what is it?
So there was this guy, I think Gupta was his name, who like he wrote a lot of scientific papers that actually built up a lot of the basic groundwork for all the geology of the Himalayas. And an Australian researcher like investigated these and found out that many of the fossils he reported from the sites did not actually come from there, but he bought them on like a Moroccan fossil market. And almost all of his work on fossils from the Himalayas was faked. It was hoax, and he basically managed to make them appear serious by always co-authoring his papers with accredited scientists from elsewhere. Like he basically just go to the co-author and he told them, okay, look, I found this and this, you want to write this with me? And like he deceived them too, so that they would lend their name for the paper. And yeah, when this came out, it was actually like this is actually seen as the worst hoax in paleontology history, even worse than like Piltdown Man and such, because it invalidated so much work that was built upon that data. And in the subsequent fallout, it came out that apparently this entire system this guy was working in, like this entire scientific system of the university and such, it was organized like a mafia.
Yep.
And one of his students that wanted to expose some more of his frauds was run over by a car suddenly before he could. And the student survived, but a few weeks later, his mother got also run over by a car and died. And so these guys, I think, are literally sending out assassins to...
I mean, people have been killed for less. And I mean, India has 1.2 billion people. So in that big a number, you have to have, statistically speaking, a lot of cranks. And also, this is a problem all over the world. I think a lot of science that comes out of China is similarly questionable. And
like a lot of the engineering work there has not been able to be replicated by scientists elsewhere.
Yeah. And so you would be surprised that I think a lot of in the present day, companies like Elsevier and those science publication companies, they're also fomenting the ground for stuff like this to take root in, basically.
Yeah, that's another problem. I think also in India that they have a lot of these predatory journals where you have to pay a lot of money, but when you pay that, you can just publish anything you want in them.
Yeah, well, even in more respected journals like Nature, they charge publication fees. Yeah. I mean, Nature famously charges like something like, don't quote me on the number, but like £2,000 as like a publication fee.
Wow,
so
that's a lot.
They end up selecting for like big laboratories or like big university researchers with tenure and stuff. But yeah, it's just a really ugly side of the whole thing. I mean, I guess when you turn these things into businesses and or even, it doesn't even have to be with capitalism. When you look at something only through the lens of rules, in given enough time, there will emerge people who exploit those rules, and give it some more time, and those people will learn to use those rules for their own power. I mean, the situation is similar in the governmental art. So in a lot of countries, the governments have grants for art, like movies and stuff like that, culture, theater work and stuff. But in a lot of countries, there are these, once again, as you said, predatory mafia groups of people who know how to work the system. They're sometimes related. Like you would have cases like there's a company that helps with art grant applications and their cousin also works in the culture ministry or stuff like that. So they only green light these like really stupid and obscure and just pointless things, and the money gets transferred and something gets displayed, but that's that. It's just a modern form of corruption.
That's also how the myth got started that vaccines cause autism. You know that story?
I have no idea.
There was this group of, Karen-esque moms that wanted to make like a class action lawsuit because they believed in this conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawyer representing them, he basically hired a scientist, a doctor, Andrew Wakefield, to carry out a study that would basically prove that point.
Yep.
And he did that study, and there was just so much fraud behind it, and literally even child abuse and such. Like they tested autistic children and looked if there was any correlation between the time of the diagnosis and when they were vaccinated. And so it turned out some of the children weren't even autistic.
Yep.
And some of the procedures that they did with those children were not made for children. Like they were like colonoscopies, for example.
Oh,
and
shit.
And some of these children got seriously abused and hurt. And it's awful. And this paper has since then thankfully been retracted by the journal.
But the damage is done.
And Wakefield has his medical license revoked. So you can't call him a doctor anymore. Even though the BBC sometimes I think still does that because they are dicks.
Well, you know what? I automatically mistrust any non-medical person who has a PhD and calls themselves doctor. Like I automatically mistrust them. And people have this naive trust in science. It is assumed that, okay, if somebody does science, the data must be correct. But you would be surprised at all levels of life, like corporate life, academic life, just people sometimes just cook numbers. I mean, there are ways to detect them. I mean, when people make up numbers, they tend to secretly follow certain algorithms. So sometimes you uncover fraud that way, but
scary stuff.
Yeah.
You just wanted to talk about funny dinosaur man.
Yeah, but we at least created a few of those. And we came to this crushing realization of the futility of modern society. All right, so it's 5 p.m. where I live now, and it's summer. And I think every cell in my body is working hard to dump melatonin into my system. This has been such a nice conversation that I feel very mellow. And if we assume we have said the last for the Triassic period, I suggest let us take a sleep break and continue our deep time dive expedition next episode with the Permian and see where we can go.
I have one more group we should discuss.
Okay, go ahead.
What about the Pseudosuchians, those bipedal crocodile ancestors?
Oh, things like Smok, Wawelski, and those creatures, right?
Yeah, but there were also more gracile ones that looked a lot like theropods.
Ephigia was one, I think.
Ephigia, yeah, that one actually looked like an ornithomimosaur almost.
Yeah, I mean, for our audience's posterity, these are animals that they're like the 1980s versions of scaly, cold-blooded dinosaurs, but for real. They come from a crocodile-grade ancestor, and some of them have body plans that strangely look like those of dinosaurs. But they have this thing at their ankles. I think that's how they're separated. So dinosaur-grade archosaurs have a bird-like ankle, which is like a simple, almost like a door hinge-like joint. It's very straight and it swivels back and forth. These other guys, they got these like crocodile-type ankle in which the foot bends through a jumble of complicated foot bones, basically. So they can't really do the whole like weird bird knee thing, and they're almost always like semi-digitrade or almost sometimes flat-footed. So they got this like weird, almost like in many reconstructions, they look like they're wearing pants, which is funny. And so there are those types of things. And I actually had an illustration of an intelligent Prolacartiform created back in the day. But this thing was so derived that it didn't look like anything alive today. It basically looked like a very long-bodied thing with like a bird-like beak week and like some fun times.
I think Prolacertiforms are even more primitive creatures, like Archosauriforms.
Yeah, they're even more basal to the creatures we're just discussing.
It's the group that sometimes is also called Protorosauria, to which belongs Tanistropheus and also Charovipteryx and such.
All the freaks go there.
Basically, yeah.
Well, I mean, certainly. I mean, this is a clade where something like the real Yılane could come from. The description of Yılane we studied when looking at the West of Eden series, it looks like one of those crocodile-grade archosaurs, far more than a mosasaur, that's for sure. And why not? There could be a civilization of very slow, maybe not that slow, but like more astute, meditative reptiles, and then these feathered psychos show up and they just kind of tear up the place. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there was a big mass extinction at the end of the Triassic that it is often attributed to like an increase in volcanism because Pangaea was breaking up and such. But yeah, maybe it was like CO2 gases from crocodile cities. Maybe
to keep warm, to keep warm.
Yeah, you remember the Kremlings from Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, those exactly look like.
Yeah, maybe they had like a King K. Rool and such, and pirate ships.
Oh, in the Donkey Kong series, did you ever go to the secret world? I think it was in Donkey Kong 2. There's a secret level.
I think, Donkey Kong 2 and 3, they had the secret world. And even the newer games on the Wii. They had some cool levels there. Like there was this one level with like really cool music in Donkey Kong Country 2.
It's the one with the volcano.
Yeah, there is this one track called Primal Rave, and it sounds like it's kind of like generic jungle music, but it sounds so cool because it has these very cool vocals of like tribal people shouting. Maybe you can put that in like the background of this video.
Okay, I will do that. I mean, I'm thinking about one soundtrack with the secret Donkey Kong level. It's got a volcano that's like continuously shooting plasma into the sky, and that's the level map. And within the map there are like 4 or 5 bonus levels, and they're extremely difficult, but you get lots of fun playing them. And the map theme music was it's like a rock soundtrack.
Donkey Kong Country 2 is one of the best games that's
ever. They really enjoyed making them. And
I mean, Donkey Kong Country 3 sometimes gets a bad rap, but that one is also really cool. Have you played that one?
I've played 1 and 2. The second game was incredible.
Yeah, the third one
was with the girl monkey who could glide with her hair, right?
Yeah, Dixie Kong, and that one is interesting. It actually goes into like the whole world is kind of Canada theme.
I think I played that too, but I remember the second one was like they pushed everything to the max. It was like they really enjoyed making those games.
Yeah, I think you would really enjoy the new games that come out on the Switch, like Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. That's the name.
As Darth Vader says in The Return of Jedi, it is too late for me. But yeah. So that being said, with Archosaurian Donkey Kong enemy Captain K. Rool civilization.
I mean, listen, we had the idea of these like island mammals in the Jurassic that develop intelligence. Maybe they look like large lemurs, or maybe they even look like Donkey Kong, and they battle these Pseudozuchians from the Triassic.
Actually, Donkey Kong games were a secret message to warn us. It's like the Finnish Ugaritic Hyper War or something.
But not like now we have a solid video game idea, like not Donkey Kong Country, but very similar.
It would be Triassic Kong or something. I don't know. Oh well, man, this was really great. Sorry, like sleep is tugging at my nerves like a siren song at the moment. And I think famously in one of our podcasts, we were recording at 1 a.m. for me. And I was like,
yeah, and like someone in the comments asked like if you were on drugs or something.
Well, I won't deny it. Like these conversations are such easygoing that there are times where my eyes close and I can still talk, but I'm like tapping into a baser part of my brain, and I'll still continue the dialogue. So that's great. Yeah. All right, that's that from me. Any last points?
No, if anyone in the comments can also come up with an idea for a civilization from this time period, feel free to share.
All right, and as always, please feel free to care too, and consider donating to us. You might be listening to this recording a year after we made it. Who knows? But if you do, we'll still be around. So please consider donating to us.
Yeah, this time machine does not run on plutonium, but on Patreon money.
Yeah, exactly. And that's that from us. Thank you once again, and we'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
Bye.